whatever you want me to debrief. But we'll do an introduction to Ecclesiastes. And I thought maybe what would be helpful is kind of like what we've done before, is bring in some of the bigger ideas periodically, like as what they call an excursus, a side trip. So as they come up, we'll come back and we'll do more kind of introductory matters, rather than spend like weeks and weeks introducing the book and never reading it, which is my usual method, as you do, right? All right. So I think we should read actually 2 chapters to start us off. The first 2 chapters, because this is the introduction. It's not just the introduction, but it does get to maybe the theme verses are at the end of chapter 2. So, anybody want to? We can have different readers. That's fine.
The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they flow again. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. What has been, what will be, and what has been done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been already in the ages before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said in my heart, I have acquired great wisdom, surpassing all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my heart has had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is but a striving after wind. For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow.
All right. Somebody else want to read? The theme just keeps going.
I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works, I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks, and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I bought male and female slaves, and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the children of man. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil that I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a striving after wind. I hated all my toil, in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after wind.
All right. So, you know why I had you go all the way to that point, is that finally there's something more positive, right? We could grab a fan from the other room, from the church too. Okay. Well, you're sitting in the sun.
I know.
You should probably not sit in the sun. You should just move. I would suggest, did I not turn it up on high? I guess I didn't.
Yeah, it's not in the sun.
Yeah.
My face is knocking off.
Okay. Speaking of heat stroke. All right, so I would suggest that 24 to 26 is probably the theme of the book, or at least it summarizes the book. Nothing is better for a man that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. This also I saw was from the hand of God. So finally, right? Ascribing to God something. For who can eat or who can have enjoyment more than I? For God gives wisdom and knowledge and joy to a man who is good in his sight. But the sinner he gives the work of gathering and collecting, that he may give to him who is good before God. This is also vanity and grasping for the wind. All right? So how would you summarize that? Or how would you summarize this whole section? What do you think? What is the preacher, if you want to use that term, what is the preacher struggling with here?
Inevitability of death.
Inevitability of death. That's certainly a theme in the book. This is why you chose the book, I can tell. Yeah. This is why you suggest.
I mean, I think there's a reason that he didn't even mention like what God did in the end.
Yeah.
I think emphasize the fact that everything he's saying is vanity is without Christ.
Correct. Did you get that? Yeah. Without ascribing to God, if you want to use the language that'll come up later, thanksgiving, without being oriented towards God in thanksgiving, you cannot receive it with joy and enjoyment, right? Well, those are the two words. So without the wisdom, knowledge, the wisdom and knowledge from God, can you have joy and enjoyment in the things that you receive, right? So it's the difference between, any of you foodies, Vicky's a foodie, right? Like to go to nice fine restaurants, right? Yeah, and try different things and whatever. Like we enjoy that food because it does delight the senses, right? But if it's simply about delight of the senses, you could easily fall into gluttony, where you're always trying to delight the sense in the same way. And actually, at some point, you become mute to it, and you just become a glutton, and you don't even enjoy it anymore, right? So why does that happen? Well, there's no moderation, right? Now, that's all earthly wisdom, right? Moderation, gluttony, right? What the preacher is saying here, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is that if instead you go in the way of the Lord's Prayer with the fourth petition, which we prayed 2 weeks ago, right? Give us this day our daily bread, right? Remember how Luther explains it, and he's riffing right off of Ecclesiastes, or the wisdom of the Scripture. God gives daily bread to everyone, right? Even to all evil people. Everybody has all this stuff that he's been talking about, that he's been striving for. Everybody has that same innate want, desire to strive for, to look for. But they have no satisfaction, no contentment, because they don't ascribe thanksgiving to the giver of the gift. They don't see it as a gift, actually. Or maybe they do, but they don't have the giver. Without the giver, the gift can become a curse even, like we said with gluttony. Right? So that's why you want to get to that point. So the key here is for life to not be vanity, empty. I don't know, what other word do you want to use for vain? Vanity?
The word translates to like, it could be like mist or vapor. Or
right, mist or vapor.
So it's like lacking substance, basically.
Right, exactly.
Which is interesting.
Unsubstantial. Yeah, worthless.
I thought this would be an interesting way to exegete striving or grasping for the wind.
Mm-hmm.
The possibility of, like, because the spirit is very constantly referred to as the wind. And
But you don't know where it comes from or where it goes.
Right.
Right.
And of course, all this without Christ is vanity.
Yeah.
And so it's, I guess, the picture in my mind was grasping for the spirit. You're trying to grab the
Right.
spirit yourself, even though the spirit.
Right, but it's not exactly the spirit. I mean, it's the spirit of things, but not the spirit of Christ. Right. So we talk about the human spirit, right?
Or like the spirit of the world.
The spirit of the age, the spirit of the world, yeah. You know, I don't know if you followed I put some of it on Facebook, you know, this seeming controversy over the Olympic opening ceremonies.
That's so disgusting.
Well, okay, it is. But the problem is that was true of England. That was true. That was of the last Winter Games, the last Summer Games, the previous Winter Games, the previous Summer Games. If you go down the list, they've done this every opening ceremonies. Why? Why? Why are they always trying to? They're trying to import on a bunch of people running around and jumping and swimming and diving and lifting, and they're trying to import some greater purpose to it. That like it's mythological even, right? And that's what the ancient Greek games were too, that they were striving to be gods, to be like the gods. Right? And so they're still trying to do that. And what is one of the greatest human triumphs of the modern age? Imagine there's no male and female, right? They even used Imagine. They always use Imagine. They love John Lennon, right? I didn't watch it. I only watch clips. But, because it's too long too. What is it, like 3.5 hours, the opening ceremonies?
Yeah.
Ugh. All the people walking in. Yeah, it's great for the athletes, but they're trying to give the athletes this sense of a greater purpose. Now, the athletes too, what are they striving for? There's actually a funny show. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I have personal experience with the Olympics, not that I was an Olympian, but I did my internship at the Olympic Training Center.
Oh, nice. Good.
1992. My degree is actually in exercise science.
Down in Milwaukee.
Lake Placid,
Oh, Lake Placid.
New York,
Oh, the big one.
the big one.
The big one.
So
Okay.
when they were all going, and that was when they kind of started doing the every 2 years for they had to
Mm-hmm.
every 2 years. So we had winter athletes and summer athletes, so it was really fun. So I was there when all the summer athletes were training to directly leave to go to Barcelona, and then we had winter.
What year was that? Oh, that was like
92.
92.
And then we
Right.
had the winter athletes training for Lillehammer.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, or was it Albertville? I can't remember. Anyway,
So you know Olympics.
so I know the Olympics, and
I couldn't remember the names.
92
Mm-hmm.
was a very different, I think, maybe mindset, but the whole like opening ceremonies are very different from the athletes themselves.
Yeah.
Because the athletes themselves are striving for like personal greatness as far as
Yeah.
like, you know, we all want to do well at something.
Right.
And, you know,
Right.
I used to be a triathlete, Max, you're a triathlete, and you're always just striving to do better. And you know what I mean? So
No, I do.
I totally understood, and I was in the weight room helping them with strength and conditioning
Right.
for their sports.
So there's definitely a different attitude from the athletes.
Yes.
I don't want to conflate the two. And the observers.
I agree.
And that was true in the ancient games too.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're not actually
Just trying to do their best.
right, but there's a greater story that's being told, if you want to use, like we talked about with paleontology, it's the same with this sort of thing, to suggest that this is I mean, a lot of the Olympic Games, in the same way of the World's Fair, was an attempt to bring nations together, right? And then there's controversy with that, like with, the Nazis hosting the games, and then, or Russia being banned from the games, right? Are they still banned? I think so. I don't know. The Russian Federation is that they can't even, well, whatever. but it is part of that. It's used for this part of this globalist kind of thing,
Yeah,
right? That we can bring.
of course.
Yeah, right. And so mythologically, you're trying to give this like greater purpose to the whole games. It's like, this is about. Well, if you're in France, I guess it's about revolution and the triumph of the will over God, right? Because he had the revolution, which was, Descartes or Marie Antoinette beheaded and all this kind of thing, right? You also have a strong pull on the ancient Greeks and like with the Bacchanalia festivals, and this is the problem that we have, is that we don't realize how deeply ingrained into our psyche mythology is. Ancient mythology and modern retellings of it. So, I mean, I think we've talked about it before with like other flood myths, that there's the Noah's flood, right? The flood with Noah, God's flood. But there's other flood stories in other cultures.
Like, what was it?
There's the Greek one, there's also the
Gilgamesh.
Is
Right.
Our older manuscripts?
And they say Gilgamesh is older, whatever. But the point being, the same thing, you have a Greek, a pagan festival. Well, yes, Da Vinci actually was pulling from the ancient Greek myth and picturing Christ as the center instead of Bacchus. So which came first, the picture of the Lord's Supper, or the Bacchanal fest from ancient Greece? You see? So this is where, and then Christians get all confused and say, oh, they were intentionally trying to offend Christians. Okay, so there's no problem saying that. On the other hand, these are ancient kind of ideas that they're presenting in order to basically captivate viewers for 2 weeks watching it, so that you keep tuning in because you need to know who triumphs and all of this kind of, and it's like, actually the athletes just want to, like, somebody asked what Ledecky, right? She came in third, and she's had this rivalry with some Australian swimmer. I don't know, I was just reading the article this morning. And she came in third, and they thought, oh, maybe she'll finally dethrone this woman who dethroned her back in 2019, whatever. And she came in third, she got a bronze. She's the third best swimmer at that speed in the world. And they're like, oh, you didn't get the gold, are you disappointed? She was like, well, yeah, I would have liked to win, but I mean, but you could see, like, they're like, oh, now you're worthless. It's vain for you to have even swum because you didn't get the gold. And you're like, what? Never mind, the medal itself is 1% gold. It hasn't been gold since 1912. So you can get them on eBay for $900. All right, you can. People sell their gold medals on eBay.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Right, exactly. Right, but what are they striving for? Like you said, I mean, I think this is always the struggle. We've talked about athletes who seek greatness, but through it all, like the baseball player pointing, or making the sign of the cross, and you're like, oh, they're just weird Hispanic baseball players. You're like, or Catholic or whatever. You're like, well, but it's not wrong. Give thanks to God for what He, through you. I mean, it's His accomplishment as much as it's yours. He made you, right? And He sustained you, and He gave you those gifts. So give Him credit, thanks, right? And I think for them, then the athlete is like, to God be the glory. And then we can actually say, wow, I mean, what an impressive thing that God has given this person to do, right? Otherwise, like what happens, I was going to say, there's a funny TV show, and it's about an alien, so, but it's, what's his name? I know him from Firefly back in the day. You didn't watch that show. It was one season. Legendary, and a movie. The guy he does all the voice acting. He plays the Duke of Weaseltown and
Alan Tudyk.
Alan Tudyk, right? There's a show where it's called Resident Alien. Anyway, he ends up getting stranded in Colorado.
Yeah.
Right. One of the main characters was a mogul skier, and got injured. And like her whole character, it's 3 seasons so far, I think, and just the trauma of trying, like, I can't ski.
Yeah.
Now, who am I if I
That's
can't
a very real thing.
if I can't
You lose
ski?
your identity.
And that's why the skiing you can delight in, but what happens when the skiing's taken from you? through injury in this case. What if you can't ever ski again like that? And maybe you become a trainer and you can live vicariously through your students, right? Or through your, whatever you call them, right? So it ends up being, I would say the opening ceremonies in particular are actually just kind of sad, because you can tell that they're trying to import this greatness and triumph and this to this amazing spectacle, but it's wind. It vaporizes. And now they just deleted the video off of YouTube. They made it private on YouTube. You can't even watch it on YouTube anymore.
Why do you think they did that?
Because probably too much heat. People were saying they were going to boycott. Viewership was down. They had 30% less than 2022 that watched it. And they were doing copyright blocks for anybody who shared clips. So you get reported for sharing copyrighted material. Yeah. You can only share anything from the Olympics. It has to be shared from the original, the NBC or Olympics app accounts. That's it. Anybody else who shares it, you get a copyright strike. And they pull your video, right? Because it's big money. They spend a lot of money to put on the thing. All right. That to me, it's like, if you're an athlete and you're going to delight in the game, that's terrific. Otherwise, it's vanity. It's like chasing after the wind. Or it's like Green Bay Packers chasing after a Super Bowl. It's vanity. Like they might get it, but then it's gone. The Cubs won the World Series, and now they're back to not even 500, right? And it doesn't even matter anymore.
Do you think, to a certain extent, though, is that something that we get from God, that we want to do better and be the best for?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this.
Yeah. Yeah, these things are not wrong, that we should eat and drink, that we should enjoy the good of our labor. He says we should, right? It's from God. Yeah. No, that we work hard. Work is given to us. Paul's very clear about that, right? Let the one who is idle work, right? Idle hands make for what? There's a proverb about idle hands, yeah. They generally get into trouble. This is why you keep the children busy all day when you're on a trip. Or when you're at higher things, right? Schedule. Morning to lights out is like, you got to do stuff. So, yeah, so let's go back to the beginning.
This story reminds me of the story of the little red hen.
Yeah. Yeah, tell me more.
You just like never read it or heard it?
Mm-hmm. No, I have, but tell me why it reminds you of it.
Well, because if you don't work, you don't get to eat.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah.
Whoever was helping her would get part of the.
Yeah. So what kind of literature is The Little Red Hen? What would you call that kind of a book? You call it a kid's book, but why tell that kind?
Parable?
It's kind of a parable. It's kind of a morality tale.
Somebody said it was like a part of the Bible story.
Oh. Yeah, fables are easier, especially like Aesop, because if you read Aesop, he actually gives a postscript to every fable. And the postscript says, here's what you were supposed to learn. So fables are written for wisdom. Not godly wisdom, of course, or necessarily, but what we'd say is earthly wisdom, right? Jesus is going to deal with this today in our gospel text, so it's actually fitting that we started this book today, because he's going to make us saying I just lost the exact language of it. The men of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. Right? So shrewdness is another word for wisdom, but we translate it as shrewd, or I don't know what the ESV translated it as. I don't remember. I didn't look at it yet, but as a kind of a negative sense. It's not a negative sense. Matt would know this, right? So if you're talking to another contractor, and they get a building done and they get it done in budget, or let's not put it that way. They get it done without losing their shirt on it. Okay, so a story like that, where you get over your head, right? Project keeps ballooning, but then they manage to get their way out, and you two are commiserating about it, and you're like, good job, right? It's like, you really should have actually put in a better bid. You should have, there were a lot of things about the project you did wrong, but that you got out of it alive, that's commendable, right? Now, that's not exactly wisdom. The wisdom would have been, hey, why didn't you knew that concrete cost more than that, or whatever it was, right? And, you didn't bid it outright, but good for you. I can appreciate that that you found a way to get out of that. And maybe it was a little bit, you had to cut some corners and that kind of stuff, but, so it is, right? You just made it work. Yeah. That's worldly wisdom, right? We call it, I think shrewdness is a good word just to say something, because wisdom to us sounds like higher knowledge. That's a kind of wisdom, though, right? Is that from experience usually, right? That you know how to get yourself out of that. And that's important for the context, because here my translation said the words of the preacher. Anybody have something different? Does yours say preacher? All right, so almost all the English translate this as preacher. It's actually the name of the book, but in the noun form. So Ecclesiastic, it's the words Ecclesiasticus from Jerome. Jerome named it the word verba ecclesiasticus, which is a direct Latin translation of the Greek beginning of the book, which was whatever that is in Greek. I don't remember now. Something ecclesiastiku. All right. This word, the words of the, and then in Hebrew, it's a totally different word. It doesn't sound like ecclesiasticus. You could translate this as the convener or the gatherer, because the word here, it'd be analogous to congregation and the one who congregates the congregation. That's who this is. The one who congregates the congregation. We'll put it that way. Koholeth is the Hebrew. Koholeth. That's what, if you read scholarly literature, they all say Koholeth, because the word isn't easily translated, so you just leave it as Hebrew. This is what happens in church. If the word isn't, like, you're going to hear it in the translation today, it's not, you cannot serve God in money, because money doesn't describe the word mammon. So you cannot serve God in mammon. We're going to use the Hebrew or the Aramaic word because the English word doesn't really get to the heart of what it's a much bigger word than just money, right? You could use wealth, it's better, but it also has the idolatrous use of wealth caught up in it, because mammon, the god mammon and all that, idolatrous god. Same thing here. The koholeth, the gatherer, the convener, or the preacher, and the reason I do that as well is because there's actually two preachers in the Levitical assembly. So if you're in the temple, there's two people that speak to you, at least two. I don't know if you knew this. That it's the same. We're doing it here now. The pastor preaches and administers the gifts, and you're refreshed and you're renewed with God by His gifts and Spirit, right? And then somebody else comes up with a microphone and makes announcements. Right? Now, the reason I do that is because I wanted the congregation president in particular to be out in front of the congregation more often, so that, Don knows the stuff about what's happening. Don't talk to Pastor about that. Pastor doesn't know what's going on. I don't know everything. I don't know all the events. I mean, I do, but I'm not the person to talk to about that. There's lots of other people, right? You talk to them. It's not that I don't care. It's just, that's not primarily what I was here for today. I was here to bless you, right? Benedict you at the end. And then I go away, and then there's other people that talk to you about other things, which are fine. Same thing happened in the temple. That there was a seat for the king. And the king, this is the temple that Solomon built, all right? But there was I just said Solomon. Does it say it's Solomon?
Son of David.
King in Jerusalem. Yeah, it's actually never named Solomon. So there's a lot of argument whether it is Solomon.
He speaks of the wisdom he was given.
Yeah. We'll talk about Solomon in a minute. So let me come back to the convener. So there's the liturgical assembly around the gifts, and that's going to be the chief priest that's serving, right, along with his assistants. And the word is going to be read and preached, and the gifts are going to be administered. Sins are going to be forgiven in the temple. And then the king is going to have an oration as well. There's no separation of church and state in that regard. There is in terms of office, but the king is as responsible for speaking, or is also responsible for speaking God's word. You couldn't be a king of Israel without having read the Torah, actually memorized it. All right, now that changes after Solomon, but for Saul, David, and Solomon, they knew God's word front to back before they were made king, or as they were made king. which is an interesting note. And that tradition does come back periodically with people like Hezekiah and Josiah and others. But all right. And that's actually instructed in the Torah that the king read. Well, not the Torah, in the prophets. All right. So the gatherer, the king of Jerusalem. So my suggestion would be that this is the kind of oration that would be read in the church, if you like, but not by the pastor, by the king. You might say by an elder, by the elder, the ruling elder, the congregation president, right? So this is the preaching of the congregational president. So imagine, too bad Don's not here. We could have had him read it. So if it's Solomon, so we'll talk about Solomon. Solomon's authorship, well, everything in the last century is everything in the Bible is in question, right? Nothing is for sure anymore, just like in our world, right? All the things that you thought were true, maybe they're not anymore. Oh well. Same with Solomon writing this, even though nobody suggested that Solomon didn't write this, except for like some Jewish people in 80, 90, a little bit. But for the most part, until after the Reformation, nobody cared. They all said it's Solomon. It belongs with Solomon. It's in the books of Solomon. They even, the Vulgate, the Latin, and then forward, they put it with Solomon's other books, which are
Song of Solomon and
Proverbs, and then Ecclesiastes, right? And they even put them in order as what they assumed was the writing or the period of life. So Song of Songs is young Solomon with all of his lovers, or his lover, right? Probably his lover, singular, but we're not reading Song of Songs. And then Proverbs is like mature Solomon. He wrote them or he spoke them. They're collected probably, put together. Ecclesiastes being mature, Gus age Solomon, right? Where you have a lot of experience in life now, right?
No.
Not much, okay. But you could tell us a thing or two. Yesterday we went to, we had a little time to burn before our flight, so we went to the National Trails Interpretive Center. Have you heard of this? It's at Casper, because the trail from Independence, Missouri, everybody went to Casper, and then they distributed from Casper to California or Oregon or wherever, or Utah, right? So Casper was kind of this hub. So there's it's run by the National Park Service, I think, or somebody, I don't know. Some national group. Whatever. It was pretty cool, actually, because it had all the wagon trail stuff, right? And, our little kids don't know anything about that. But they actually you could pick up the phone and push the button and listen to somebody talk to you. They had recordings of people that lived through it. Died in 1932. Well, we had recording technology. So it's 1932, but they were born in 1860 or 1850, right? 40, right? So they even saw Civil War. It's just kind of crazy, right? And these people are talking to you, and you can listen to them, and they're telling you what happened and what the life was. So what a brilliant thing to actually have their recorded wisdom, the things they experienced for us, right? Because otherwise we might skew the history a little bit to conform to what we want it to mean and what we want it to be like. Well, you could do that too. Yeah, right. One of the things I didn't realize is how many people were saying, don't go west. Don't do it. The government wants you to do it. They're giving you free land. Don't do it. You're going to die. And 400,000 people made the journey over that span of 50 years or whatever, and until the railway, right? Until railroads. What was it? It was 400 to 500 a year were dying, something like that. Mostly cholera, but other things. Yeah. Anne said she'd die of heat stroke. She wouldn't have made it. So that's funny. Why did I bring that up? Because that's wisdom, that's knowledge from somebody who's lived a long life and seen many things, right? And I think this is interesting because the histories, both First and Second Kings, and Second Chronicles, neither of them, or no, Solomon's in First Kings, First Chronicles. Neither of them actually describe Solomon repenting after the apostasy of 1 Kings 12, I think it is, where he lets in all the foreign gods with his wives. of course. And so there's question as to whether Solomon repented and returned to faith, even. He's not described as having died and gone to be with his fathers in the way that the other David was and others. So, but this book would suggest, if this is written by later Solomon, near death, maybe, like I need to describe, I need to tell you, my son or future sons, like with Proverbs, but here, future generations. Having gone through all of this, don't make the same mistakes I did, basically. This is what happens, right? And so all the things that you could do, it's all vanity of vanities. It's all like grasping at the wind. It's like, and you think you have it today and tomorrow it's gone, right? And that's not just wealth, but that's certainly true of wealth, right? But it's life in general, right? You think you've got your health and then it's gone, right? Yep, just like that. Well, what other sorts of things? Your job, right? Your work, your physical mobility, or your ability to compete at a high level, right? You have it and then it's gone. You get an ACL or whatever it is, and never mind the technology. It's like, nope, you're never going to compete at that level again, right? Whatever it is, I mean, you hold on to it. You think you have it, and then, or your mind. That would be another one. Nobody wants your mind to kind of turn into vapor, but it kind of does, right? You don't remember things like you used to. No, I don't. No, I don't either. Now, is that helpful? I think so. If you get to the conclusion at the end of chapter 2, where you say, well, actually, you can enjoy all the things, even though they don't last, you can still enjoy them, as long as you recognize they're gifts from God, right? And that you find your enjoyment in Him, not in the thing itself. So do you think, yeah.
Romans 8:28.
Okay.
Uses all things for good for those who love Him. And so many times He uses those things that sound like horrible things for you.
Right.
To repent and to come back to Him. And
right. He'll take things from you.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big theme in this book.
Yeah.
Probably a bigger theme in the book of Job.
Then you're grateful, actually.
Yeah. And Job is that way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the worst example. Is there another book that's kind of like that? Lamentations is like that too. That's Jeremiah, but it's the same sort of,
Maybe James a little bit.
James a little bit as well. Well, and maybe because when we talk about wisdom, this kind of, if you like, knowledge from God that's imparted to us or revealed to us, it's not to justify us. So what Solomon's going to talk about here through the end of the book doesn't save us from sin, death, and hell. But there is another category of, if you like, literature or scriptural revelation, and that would be wisdom, that's for the Christian who now is justified by faith in Christ, who has been saved and is nourished and strengthened by His word and sacrament frequently, regularly. Then there's the now what? Now that I am saved, well, what does that mean, right? And here, I mean, what he suggests, you mentioned James is a good one, because that talks about the worker as well, Let the one who desires to eat work. That's, I think, 1 Timothy, actually, or one of the pastoral epistles. It's like, well, what's the difference between you and your neighbor who's not a Christian, or who's some other religion, or atheist, or agnostic, or whatever? What's the actual difference in the way that you live day to day? It's not in your work.
That you know you're forgiven.
Yes. But it's not your work, it's not your food, right? It's not the toils, it's not even bearing children or having family. That doesn't distinguish us as Christians. The Muslims do that, right? We saw Amish people doing that. It's really fun to, I don't know if you've ever seen Amish swimsuits. Very interesting. It's the same clothes they always wear, except they dry like this. And it's like, I don't know what fabric that is. I mean, it's cotton probably, but like, how do they know they make this stuff? Like, they get out and the lady with their dresses, they just kind of do this, and then they're like dry in a minute. Like, I don't know where you got these swimsuits, these crazy stuff. And the men too, they got two-piece, although they take their shirt off too. And it's cool to see their suntan, because they've got, for the suspenders, they got suspender straps on their back, the men. It's kind of cool. Anyway, they were at the hot springs. Why did I bring that up? Oh, that they were bearing children, right, and delighting in them. And they're not exactly Christian, I mean, I don't know. We'll let Jesus figure it out. So what's the difference? And you're right, it's faith in God. Faith in God for the forgiveness of sins, the justified life. Is that we can receive all things as a gift and delight in them, find enjoyment in them, but not having any kind of eternal or they're all momentary, and we understand that, right? We understand that this is a temporary or momentary joy, but we can have it, and we don't have to feel guilty about it. The same thing, this is the problem with wealth, right? People say, the love of money is the root of all evil. And you're like, no, it's all kinds of evil. You're confusing the translation, and the problem isn't the money, it's the love of it, right? So there's all sorts of problems with the way people say that, because they like, well, that means you need to be poor if you're really going to be a faithful Christian. He's like, well, you might need to be because of the way you love money, right? You might need to give it all away like the rich young ruler, right? That might be your repentance. Or you might say, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to translate this into wealth for the goal that I take care of my neighbor, right? Or that the church is preserved, or the gospel is preached to the nations, right? Missionary work, or whatever it is, right? That's why, maybe it's important to actually designate that whatever outlasts you, which actually nothing outlasts you in a way, right? Everything that you have also sees dust and decay, just the way you will too. But maybe it's important to designate it ahead of time, so that when you're working, you can say, yeah, I'm working now and I'm enjoying this life that God has given me, but I also know that whatever that he provides that does transcend me for a time will go to service, for the things that I want to support, right? And that's that pre-planning gift idea. But it changes your mindset when you think about, like, what would I like my legacy to be? I don't want to use the word legacy, because Solomon is saying here your legacy is worthless. It's vain, right? You don't actually have a legacy, so it's better just to give it away. The most vain thing is thinking that Dale Carnegie still lives, or that he imagined that he would still live on, through all of his libraries or whatever. But they're not even lasting. They're tearing them down, right? A lot of those still exist, but or his foundations or whatever. Because all it takes is like one of the children or fund managers to make some bad investments, and now the entire Carnegie endowment's gone. Schwann Foundation, that happened to them. They lost a huge, like 40% of their wealth from selling frozen treats with a Caribbean island that they invested in. that went south. The investment went, they got over under on it. Anyway. So vain, all the thing. What is the profit? Why do we work? I like this kind of literature. Maybe this is the way to conclude on this for today. Because it's darkly, ironic? I don't want to say it's cynical. I don't think Solomon's...
Realistic?
What's that?
Realistic?
Yeah, darkly realistic. Honest. Yeah, true and honest.
It's like the one person who's just like, I don't care how it's received, but this is how it is.
Right, and that's why I mentioned Gus. Gus just says it how it is. Yeah. Well, I mean, what's the point in lying about it? Or making you, it'll all be okay. No, it won't be. It won't be. Now this is the problem for us, especially as Lutherans, because we try to be completely honest and truthful, even if it is perceived as dark and cynical and pessimistic, black pill, as they say today, right? I've told the story before, but I'll just end on this thought. I had a coworker that came to the baptism of Gabriel, probably, before I went to seminary. Could have been Elsie. Maybe it was Elsie. I was surprised. I just invited him, and he showed up with his family. And I said, on Monday, or Tuesday, we didn't work on, store was closed on Monday. Came on Tuesday, and I said, what did you think? And he's like, it was depressing. I'm like, really? It was depressing? Well, good sermon. I didn't hear it was depressing. He's like, I'm not a poor, miserable sinner. I don't want to hear that. Right? So but I think it's important, because that's how this could be taken too. It's like, my whole life is worthless. Well, if you find your identity and value and purpose in the work itself, or in what you gain, or in the wealth, or any of the or accomplishment or the trophies or the medals or whatever it is, yeah, let's be honest. You're not going to take that with you. Nobody's going to remember you. They won't even remember your name. The only reason I know Ledecky's name is that it was the headline. But like in a year, I will have forgotten it again, or even a week even, right? And your legacy is nothing, unless you're a swimmer, I guess. But even then, can you name like all the, no, right? And that doesn't mean it had no value, but it was temporary. And I think that's the important thing. Like the wind, Ethan was pointing out. It goes and it comes and it goes. And trying to grasp it and hold it down, you can't do it, right? In this way, it seems very similar to Stoic philosophy of the Greeks, which is after this, but I don't know if you know about the Stoics, right? But memento mori, remember you're dying, that you die, right? Well, that seems kind of depressing to think about death every day and to have a little skull medallion or something that you wear so that you don't forget. But on the other hand, it's true. And then you don't hold on to life so tightly that you don't enjoy it now because you think maybe you have tomorrow, right? And why put off to tomorrow what you could do today?
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, that's also Stoic, right? That's also Stoic, even though that's Latin. Yeah, yeah. So we'll dig more into this next time, maybe as much as you want. But that's your introduction to Ecclesiastes. Is that helpful?
Yeah, very fascinating.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn here. So, okay, I don't know.